My name is Rachel Lawson. I am 32 years old, and I never thought the man who raised me would one day throw me and my daughter into a blizzard like we were nothing more than garbage. Yet, that is exactly what happened on Thanksgiving night. The memory starts with the sharp crack of crystal against oak. My father's hand slamming his wine glass down so hard, the stem shattered red liquid splattering across the pristine white tablecloth like blood. His face twisted in fury, his voice slicing through the laughter and chatter. "You are the family disgrace, Rachel, and you always will be." Every eye at the long dining table turned toward me, my daughter Lily shrinking against my arm, her tiny body trembling as she clutched the ribbon of her holiday dress. The air seemed to vanish from my lungs as the words echoed the fire in the hearth, suddenly too hot, the scent of roasted turkey turning to ash in my mouth. My brother smirked, my sister covered her lips with a manicured hand to hide her satisfied smile, and my mother stared down at her plate as if none of it concerned her. I opened my mouth to defend Lily, to tell them we did not deserve this humiliation, but my father rose from his chair, looming over me like a judge about to pass sentence. "Get out!" He roared, his finger stabbing the air toward the front door, his voice shaking the chandelier above. "Take your bastard child and get out of my house. Tonight." For a heartbeat, the room was silent, only the sound of Lily's muffled sobs against my shoulder. Then the storm outside answered his command wind, shrieking against the windows, snow pounding the panes. I stood my legs unsteady, but my chin held high, and as I lifted Lily into my arms, my father wrenched the door open, the blizzard exploding inside freezing air, lashing my face. Laughter followed me out cruel and hollow, and the last thing I heard before the door slammed was my sister's whisper. "Finally, the trash is gone." The snow swallowed us the driveway already buried, the cold burning my skin as Lily whispered, "Mommy, why does Grandpa hate us?" I tightened my hold on her, my heart pounding with a rage sharper than the storm itself, and I vowed in that moment that every cruel word would be repaid. The cold that night was not new to me. It had been creeping into my life since childhood. Not the kind of cold that comes from snow or wind, but the kind that seeps into your bones when the people meant to protect you make you feel like an intruder in your own home. The Lawson family had always been a fortress of appearances, a colonial-style house perched in an affluent corner of Connecticut where the hedges were trimmed into perfect squares and the front porch gleamed under fresh coats of white paint. But behind those walls, discipline was measured in bruises and silence. My father, Richard Lawson, had been a decorated officer before he turned to business. His medals polished and displayed in the study, his voice trained to command and to break. He believed loyalty meant obedience, and disobedience was punished swiftly, sometimes with words so sharp they left invisible scars, sometimes with his hand striking across my cheek when I dared to question him. My mother, Evelyn, played the role of the perfect officer's wife. Slim, elegant, her pearls always gleaming, her smile, always polite for the neighbors, but her true talent was gaslighting. When I cried as a child after one of my father's blows, she would kneel down, cup my face, and whisper that I was exaggerating, that it was just a lesson that good daughters did not provoke their fathers. Slowly, I learned that in the Lawson house, love was conditional and respect was earned only by becoming the reflection of my father's will. My older siblings, Ethan and Victoria, learned the lesson well. Ethan, 2 years older, absorbed our father's ambitions like gospel. He became the golden child captain of debate honor roll straight into law school with my father's money smoothing every obstacle. At dinners, our father would beam at him, clap his back, call him the pride of the Lawson name. Victoria, 4 years older, learned to weaponize charm. She married into wealth, quickly parading her perfect family back into our home. Every holiday, her children dressed in coordinated outfits, her voice always cutting me down with sweetly delivered insults. They were the children who shone under my father's spotlight while I lingered in the shadows, more interested in software coding and late nights scribbling ideas than in dance recitals or cotillion. From the age of 12, I knew that every time I lifted my eyes at the dinner table, I would meet the comparison. Why can't you be like Ethan? Why can't you smile like Victoria? Why do you insist on being difficult, Rachel? By 16, I had grown resistant. I stayed up late, building programs, fascinated by how lines of code bent to my will in ways I never could in my father's house. My reward was more contempt. Computers won't raise a family. He sneered once when he found me at my desk yanking the plug from the wall. You'll amount to nothing. The sting of those words burned for years. College should have been my escape, a chance to breathe away from the fortress, but even there, the chains followed me. Richard inspected every grade report Evelyn phoned to remind me that a young woman's worth was measured by who she married, not what she built. Then came the moment that branded me forever in their eyes. At 26 in my senior year, I found out I was pregnant. The father, a classmate who vanished the instant I told him, left me alone with the truth. I dialed home that night with shaking hands, the silence after my announcement stretching for nearly 30 seconds before my father's voice snapped through the line. You've embarrassed us all. You will come home and we will fix this mistake. Fix meant abortion adoption erasure. But I said no. I said I would keep my baby. That was the night they stopped seeing me as a daughter and began treating me as a stain. For months, I endured the cruelest phase of my life. Evelyn would parade me at gatherings only to whisper lies to her friends, telling them I was ill. Taking time off studies, never mentioning Lily growing inside me. Richard refused to look at me except to issue commands. Ethan sneered, calling me irresponsible. Victoria delighted in mocking me, asking which one of my boyfriends had abandoned me. And yet, in the stillness of my tiny off-campus apartment, when Lily kicked for the first time, I knew I had chosen rightly. I juggled online classes, coding freelance jobs, and late nights rocking my newborn against my chest, my body aching, my eyes raw from lack of sleep, but my spirit hardening. What they never knew was that during those sleepless nights, I built the skeleton of a program, a design tool that caught the eye of investors. By the time Lily turned 3, I had sold the company for $15 million after taxes enough to buy safety and independence. But I told no one. To my family, I played the role they expected the struggling single mom barely scraping by with a supposed tech support job. Let them sneer, let them call me weak, I thought. I wanted to see if they could ever love me without knowing my worth in dollars. Year after year, I returned to their house on holidays, enduring their condescension, their digs, their deliberate exclusion. Lily grew a bright, empathetic child, still eager to see her grandparents, still oblivious to the daggers in their words. She adored them even as they compared her unfavorably to Victoria's polished children. And I let her, because I thought maybe one day the walls would crack. Maybe Richard would look at us and see, not disgrace, but family. But Thanksgiving was always the test, the day where everything boiled. Each year, I carried gifts, carefully chosen bottles of wine, toys, handmade scarves, only to be met with criticism about my tardiness, my clothes, my child's manners. Still, I smiled, telling myself I could swallow it for Lily's sake. Until that night when Richard's hand slammed the glass and his words cut deeper than ever before when the snowstorm outside became less brutal than the cold within those walls. That was not the first humiliation, but it was the last straw. The morning of that Thanksgiving had begun deceptively bright, the sun flashing against a sky of pale blue. The air crisp but bearable, yet in my chest the familiar dread churned. I had spent the week preparing, convincing myself that maybe this year would be different. Maybe the family I was born into could look past their bitterness. I dressed carefully, pulling on a burgundy sweater dress, modest and elegant, and helped Lily into a red woolen frock with a matching coat. She twirled in front of the mirror, giggling, her cheeks flushed with the excitement of seeing her cousins. "Will Grandpa smile at me today?" she asked innocently. I kissed her curls, swallowing the knot in my throat. "Of course, sweetheart, we'll have a good time." But the truth whispered inside me, no matter how perfectly I presented us, we were already condemned in their eyes. On the drive over, the weather shifted. Snow began to fall in heavy flakes, swirling across the windshield, wind shoving the car sideways. My grip tightened on the steering wheel as Lily pressed her nose to the glass, marveling. "It's like magic!" she exclaimed. I nodded, though unease coiled deeper. The Lawson house loomed ahead, its pillars wrapped in garlands lights twinkling as if warmth and welcome waited inside, though I knew the glow was only surface. I parked in the circular drive, careful to follow my father's unspoken rule of leaving the space nearest to the steps clear for his car. Already, my brother's sleek black sedan and my sister's luxury SUV stood proudly in place. As I guided Lily up the icy steps, clutching the bottles of Bordeaux and carefully wrapped gifts, the door opened. Victoria stood there, her eyes raking over me, then flicking to Lily, her lips curved into something sharp. "At least she's dressed decently this time," she muttered before calling sweetly over my shoulder to her children inside. No hug, no greeting, only disdain. Lily hesitated at my side, pressing closer, and I urged her forward, whispering reassurance. In the foyer, the scent of roasted turkey and spiced apples lingered, yet instead of comfort, it clawed at me a reminder of countless nights I had been belittled under this same roof. Ethan appeared from the den, a tumbler of whiskey in his hand, his tie loosened. He gave me a brief dismissive hug, murmuring, "Just don't embarrass us tonight, Rachel." My jaw clenched, but I kept silent for Lily's sake. From the study drifted the booming voice of my father, already gruff with drink, commenting on the weather and politics. My mother bustled past with a silver tray, sparing me only a glance, her lips tight. "Don't let Lily touch anything precious," she ordered, as if my daughter were a threat to their curated perfection. The table was set with precision crystal gleaming under the chandelier place cards arranged in the rigid hierarchy that had always governed our meals. I recognized our spot immediately at the far end near the kitchen, as far from my father's chair as possible. The children of Victoria and Ethan ran freely through the rooms, their laughter filling the halls, but Lily was shunted aside, told to sit quietly with a coloring book at the corner of the playroom. I watched from the doorway as my niece and nephew deliberately excluded her from their game, mocking her crayons as childish. My heart ached, yet I forced a smile and coaxed her into helping fold napkins in the kitchen instead. Her small hands shaped them into swans, proud of her creation, and she carried them carefully to the table, only to have my mother whisk them away with a curt, "We're using the lace rings tonight." Each dismissal stacked like bricks against my ribs, suffocating, but I pressed on, determined not to let Lily sense the full weight of our exile. As 4 o'clock struck, my mother rang the silver bell that summoned us all. We filed into the dining room, the glow of candles illuminating polished silverware, the air thick with roasted meats and tension. My father rose his posture, rigid eyes sweeping the table. "Tonight we give thanks for our blessings," he announced, his gaze pointedly skimming past me. He toasted Ethan's recent case victory, Victoria's fundraising gala, their children's school achievements. Applause rang out, pride swelling among them. Then, silence. No mention of me, no acknowledgement of Lily. My daughter's wide eyes turned to me, confusion clouding her innocence. "What about us, Mommy?" she whispered, her voice carrying through the hush. The room tensed. A chuckle slipped from Ethan, cruel and sharp. My father's lips curved in a cold smile. "We can acknowledge Rachel's persistence in her position. Consistency has its merits." A laugh followed from Victoria, derision veiled as amusement. My cheeks burned, but I forced calm for Lily's sake. "Thank you, Dad," I said evenly. I tried to shift the conversation, praising Lily's art project, but was swiftly cut down as Victoria flourished her phone to showcase Zoe's artwork displayed in a gallery. The sting of comparison sharpened. As platters passed, the juiciest cuts bypassed our plates. My daughter handed the driest scraps. My father drained another glass, his remarks growing more pointed. "So, Rachel, have you considered giving Lily a proper father figure? A child needs stability." I set down my fork with deliberate care. "She has stability, she has love, she has me." His eyes narrowed, his voice rising. "But not a man in the house. Not proper family values." Before I could respond, Victoria's announcement stole the room. Another pregnancy, lauded, another toast raised. Cheers filled the air, my father beaming, tears of pride glistening. Lily's small hand tugged at my sleeve, her lips forming the words, "Why don't they cheer for me?" My throat constricted. I told her softly, "One day they'll see." But in my heart I knew they never would. The moment dessert arrived, the mask of civility began to slip. My father poured himself another glass of Bordeaux, his cheeks flushed, his silver hair shining under the chandelier, his presence like a storm waiting to break. The children clamored for cookies, their laughter filling the gaps in conversation, but at the far end of the table, Lily sat silently, her small shoulders drawn inward, eyes fixed on the napkin folded neatly in her lap. She had been ignored through every toast, every story, every round of applause, and though she was only 6, she could already sense the cruelty of deliberate exclusion. I leaned close, whispering encouragement, but even as I did, Victoria's voice rose sweet on the surface, venom underneath. "Rachel, I do hope Lily learns to sit still at proper dinners. My Zoe and Caleb have already mastered table etiquette." My father chuckled, lifting his glass. "Not surprising, considering who raised them." The words sliced across the table like knives. Ethan added, "At least they have an example of a real family." The implication hung heavy, their laughter simmering. My face burned, but before I could speak, Lily, in her innocent eagerness to belong, lifted her head and said, "I won an art prize at school. My teacher says it's going in the winter show." For a heartbeat, the room froze. Her tiny voice carried across the polished wood, a fragile offering. And then, like a match snuffed out, my mother said, "That's nice, dear," before turning to Victoria. "Tell me more about your nursery plans." The dismissal was complete. I felt my chest tighten as Lily's face fell, her small hands fidgeting with the napkin, her pride crushed in front of everyone. Anger rose hot inside me, but I swallowed it, determined not to ruin the night for her. I forced myself to smile, to praise her softly in her ear, but the universe seemed intent on breaking us that night. Aiden, Victoria's son, reached for a platter, his elbow striking a crystal bowl perched near Lily. It toppled, crashing to the floor in a spray of shattered shards. Gasps filled the room. Lily jerked back, frightened, but before she could speak, Victoria snapped, "Lily, look what you've done!" My daughter's eyes widened in horror. "It wasn't me," she stammered. Aiden bumped it. "Don't blame my son for your clumsiness," Victoria hissed, standing. My father's chair scraped back with a screech, his eyes blazing. "That bowl was your grandmother's crystal, a family heirloom. This is exactly why we can't have nice things around your child." My pulse roared in my ears. "Dad, it was an accident. Lily didn't— I saw what happened," he barked, slamming his fist against the table so hard the silverware jumped. "She knocked it over just like you've always been careless and quick to blame others." Tears welled in Lily's eyes. "I'm sorry, Grandpa. I didn't mean to." Her voice cracked small and broken. My mother sighed heavily, her words like ash. "Intentions don't fix broken heirlooms." The room blurred as rage surged through me. For years, I had tolerated the whispers, the comparisons, the deliberate cuts. But this, seeing my daughter forced to apologize for something she hadn't done, split me wide open. "That's enough," I said, my voice sharper than I intended echoing in the stunned silence. My father's gaze locked on mine, icy and unyielding. "Enough, no." "Rachel, I've had enough. Enough of your presence dragging this family down. 32 years old, no husband, no real career, parading that child as if she were some badge of honor. You've always been a disgrace, and now you're raising another." His words struck harder than any hand ever had, each syllable a blade. Lily sobbed openly, trembling against my arm. Ethan shifted uncomfortably, muttering "Dad, maybe," but Richard cut him off with a roar. No more silence, no more pretending. My colleagues ask about my children, and I speak of Ethan's cases, Victoria's charity, and then their pitying eyes remind me of you. The single mother, the shame of the Lawson name. He turned toward Lily, pointing a trembling finger. "And now she will be just as careless, just as disrespectful." The blood drained from my face. "Do not speak of my daughter that way," I said, my voice low. "Dangerous." He sneered. "You can't stop me. You've never stopped me. You are weak. Rachel, always running, always failing." And then it happened. He lunged forward, his hand raised, the same hand that had struck me countless times as a child. But this time I moved. I rose, blocking his path, gripping his wrist with every ounce of strength I had. For the first time in my life, I met his fury head on. "You will not touch her," I said, each word steady despite the pounding of my heart. The table erupted chairs, scraping voices clashing, but all I saw were his eyes, shock then rage, then something that looked almost like fear. He ripped his arm free, his voice thundering. "Get out, both of you! Out of my house! Tonight! You are nothing but trash!" Evelyn gasped faintly. "Richard, it's Thanksgiving." But he silenced her with a glare. Ethan looked away, silent. Victoria smirked triumphant. The verdict was final. My father wrenched the front door open, the storm howling into the hall snow, swirling across the polished floor. Out he bellowed. I gathered Lily into my arms, her sobs muffled against my chest, and stepped into the blizzard. The wind cut like knives, the snow blinding, but in that moment the storm outside was kinder than the storm I had left behind. Behind me, the door slammed with a finality that echoed in my bones. Lily's voice, broken and small, reached my ear. "Why does Grandpa hate us?" I kissed her hair, holding her close. My own tears lost in the snow. "He doesn't hate us," I whispered, though inside me the truth boiled. "He fears us, and one day they will see who the real Disgrace is." The cold slammed into us like a wall as soon as we crossed the threshold. Snow whipped across the driveway in white sheets, burying the circular path in minutes, wind clawing at my face until my skin burned. I pulled Lily's hood tight around her small head, cradling her against me as I stumbled toward the car, my boots sinking deep into drifts. She clung to me, shivering, her sobs muffled against my shoulder. "Mommy, I can't breathe. It's too cold," she whimpered. My heart fractured at her words, fury igniting hotter than the icy gale. I yanked open the car door, shoving the bottles of Bordeaux, and carefully wrapped gifts onto the seat, no longer caring if they shattered like the crystal bowl that had condemned us. Lily crawled in her teeth chattering, and I wrapped my coat around her before sliding into the driver's seat. For a moment, I simply sat there, the storm battering the windshield, the glow of the Lawson house still visible behind us, warm light spilling from its windows like a beacon mocking us. I could still hear the echoes of their laughter, their voices dripping contempt, the slam of the door like a final judgment. My fingers gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles whitened. Years of swallowing insults, of lowering my head, of enduring their disdain for the sake of belonging, crashed into me like the snow outside. "Enough!" Lily reached for my hand, her voice so small. "Why don't they want us, Mommy?" I turned to her, meeting her tear-streaked face illuminated by the dashboard light. "It's not that they don't want us," I said, forcing steadiness into my tone. "It's that they don't know how to love us. And that is their failure, not ours." She sniffled, leaning into my arm, slowly soothed by my words. I started the engine, the headlights carving narrow tunnels through the white chaos. As I pulled away from the house, I caught one last glimpse of my father framed in the doorway, his figure tall and rigid, watching us vanish into the storm. For once, I didn't flinch beneath his gaze. Instead, I felt a surge of clarity sharper than any blade. He believed he had exiled me, cast me into the cold, but he had only freed me. As the car crept down the treacherous road, Lily drifting into exhausted sleep beside me, I whispered into the darkness more vow than prayer. "They think we're gone. They think we're broken, but they have no idea what's coming." The storm raged, swallowing the road ahead, but in my chest a fire burned steady. For the first time in years, I was not just surviving their cruelty. I was preparing to strike back. That night, after navigating the treacherous roads and settling Lily into bed in our drafty apartment, I sat at the small kitchen table with the storm still howling outside. My fingers shook not from cold, but from fury, each memory of my father's words and the sting of his raised hand circling like vultures in my mind. For years I had borne their contempt, believing silence was safer, but tonight I knew silence was complicity. I opened my laptop, the familiar glow washing over my face, and pulled up encrypted files I had guarded for years. To the world, I was a struggling single mom, working remote tech support jobs, but behind that facade lay the truth. 3 years earlier, the design software I had built in the sleepless nights of Lily's infancy caught the attention of a venture firm. Within months, it was acquired by a major corporation, the wire transfer landing $15 million into my account. I had signed non-disclosure agreements, stayed out of the spotlight, and let the world assume the male co-founder was the genius. I chose anonymity because I wanted to see if my family could ever love me without knowing my worth in dollars. Tonight, I realized they never would. The mask no longer served me. I dialed a number I had not called in months. Daniel Carter's voice answered steady and warm, the voice of the one friend from college who had stood by me when everyone else vanished. Now a lawyer in Manhattan, he had offered more than once to help me cut ties, but I had hesitated. "Daniel, it's time I said." He was quiet for a beat, then answered, "Tell me what happened." I recounted everything from the shattered crystal bowl to the slap poised above Lily to the final command to get out. His voice hardened. "Rachel, this has gone beyond cruelty. This is abuse. We can hold them accountable." I inhaled sharply. "I don't want pity. I want justice. And I want them stripped of the power they wield so carelessly." He promised to drive up that weekend bringing documents and strategies. But I knew legal pressure alone wouldn't be enough. I needed evidence, and I needed to strike where they believed themselves untouchable money and reputation. That was when I called Maya Torres, a private investigator known for her discretion. She owed Daniel a favor, and when she heard my voice calm but resolute, she agreed to dig. My instructions were clear. Look into Richard Lawson's finances, his investments, his taxes. Dig into Ethan's law practice, his clients, his sudden wealth. And Victoria's charity work, the endless galas she hosted with mysteriously abundant funds. I suspected rot, but suspicion was not enough. I wanted proof. After the calls, I sat in the dim light watching Lily sleep her breath. Even her small hand curled around her stuffed rabbit. My heart clenched with both love and guilt. She deserved safety joy, a family that cherished her. I had tried to carve that from the wreckage of the Lawsons, but it was time to accept the truth. The family I had longed for no longer existed. All that remained was a toxic empire built on lies, gaslighting, and control. And empires could be toppled. I opened another folder on my laptop, one that contained outlines for a foundation I had dreamed of launching programs to support single mothers and tech scholarships for young women who had been silenced. I had shelved it thinking I was not ready. Tonight I realized I was more than ready. By morning, emails were sent. Daniel confirmed our legal angle. Maya began trailing my father and siblings. And I contacted my banker, ensuring my assets were shielded untouchable. The Lawson family thought they had cast me into the snow to shiver and fade. What they did not realize was that they had unleashed me. As dawn broke, the storm outside finally subsided, snow piled high along the sidewalks. Lily stirred, blinking sleepily. "Is it morning?" she asked. "Yes, baby," I said, kissing her hair. "And everything is about to change." Maya did not waste time. Within a week, she had sent me a thick envelope delivered by courier stamped confidential. I waited until Lily was asleep before spreading the papers across my kitchen table, the storm of secrets laid bare under the yellow lamplight. My father Richard, the man who demanded obedience and preached honor, had been lying for years. Bank records revealed he had siphoned money through shell accounts registered in the Cayman Islands, disguising transfers as veterans' benefits and disability claims. IRS documents hinted at fraudulent deductions, inflated consulting fees, entire years where taxes had been doctored. He wore his medals on his chest but lined his pockets with deception. Ethan, the golden boy lawyer, was no better. Maya had traced payments from corporate clients that had bypassed his firm and landed directly in his personal account, bribes disguised as consulting fees. Worse, she had found an email chain where he promised favorable outcomes in exchange for luxury perks, a vacation in Aruba, a leased sports car. The man my father paraded as the pride of the Lawson name was a criminal in an expensive suit. And Victoria, my perfect sister, the socialite who sneered at my child's art prize, had been stealing from her own charity. Maya had bank statements showing funds meant for underprivileged children funneled into a private account, then used for designer clothing, vacations to Europe, even a down payment on her second home. The photographs of her entering luxury boutiques with donor money in hand made bile rise in my throat. The hypocrisy was staggering. For years they had looked at me, the single mother, as if I were dirt beneath their shoes, while they themselves wallowed in corruption. I sat back, my hands trembling, not from fear, but from the electric surge of power. Finally, the scales had tipped. I called Daniel, my voice steady. "We have what we need." He arrived 2 days later, briefcase bulging with documents. Together, we mapped out the strategy. Step 1. Secure copies of all evidence in multiple locations. His office encrypted cloud storage and a safety deposit box. Step 2. Prepare legal complaints to the IRS, the State Bar Association, and the Attorney General's office. Step 3. Craft the narrative. Because justice in courtrooms took years, but reputations could crumble overnight if the right truths were revealed in the right rooms, I envisioned it clearly a family gathering, not whispered accusations behind closed doors, but a public unmasking with witnesses present. They had humiliated me before their friends and neighbors. I would return the favor with truth. Daniel hesitated. "Rachel, once this is out, there is no going back. You'll burn every bridge." I met his gaze, steel in mine. There were never bridges, only chains. And I'm done being bound. While Daniel filed the first complaints, I focused on preparing my daughter for the shift. I enrolled Lily in a private school using my real name this time. No more hiding under false modesty. I signed a lease on a larger apartment with sunlight streaming through wide windows, a place where she could paint and play without fear of being scolded for spilling juice on Belgian lace. At night, when she asked if we were going to Grandpa's house for Christmas, I stroked her hair and said gently, "No, love. We are making our own Christmas this year, a real one." She accepted it with surprising ease, perhaps sensing the weight that had lifted from my shoulders. Meanwhile, Maya continued her surveillance, gathering photographs of Richard meeting shadowy figures in hotel bars, of Ethan stepping out of luxury cars, registered to clients, of Victoria's shopping bags bulging with stolen donations. Each new piece was another nail in the coffin of their pristine facade. I compiled everything into a binder, thick and damning, labeling each section meticulously. One evening, staring at the stack of evidence, I felt a surge of vindication so strong it left me dizzy. For years, they had called me weak, irresponsible, a disgrace. Now, I held the proof that they were the disgrace. The only question was how to deliver the blow. Daniel suggested quiet filings, letting the authorities handle it discreetly, but I shook my head. They destroyed me in public. They humiliated my child in public. This ends in public. So we waited biding time until the next inevitable family gathering, when the Lawsons would once again open their doors to friends, business associates, and neighbors eager to show off their status. This time, I would not enter as the scapegoat. I would enter as the executioner of their illusions. Every night leading up to it, I replayed that Thanksgiving moment in my mind, my father's fist slamming the table, Lily's tearful apology for a crime she did not commit. The image fueled me, sharpening my resolve. Justice was no longer an abstract dream. It was a plan, precise and inevitable, ready to ignite. The Lawsons prided themselves on tradition, and Christmas was their grandest stage. The house glittered under strings of lights, wreaths perfectly arranged on every window, the driveway lined with lanterns to guide guests toward the front steps. Inside, the air buzzed with conversation, champagne flutes clinking as neighbors, colleagues, and society friends gathered. It was the night Richard Lawson relished most, his chance to parade his family as proof of his power and legacy. But this year, uninvited yet undeterred, I arrived with a different purpose. Snow dusted my coat as I strode up the steps, my heels clicking against the stone. Lily safely with a babysitter at home. Tonight was not for her eyes. Tonight was for mine. A hush rippled when I entered the foyer. Heads turned, whispers flickered. My father's voice carried from the dining room, sharp and commanding, then faltered as he saw me standing there. His glass paused midair, his face tightening with fury. "What are you doing here?" he demanded, his tone a warning growl. I smiled, calm and deliberate. "I came to deliver gifts." Murmurs swelled. My mother appeared at his side, her pearls gleaming, her smile brittle. "Rachel, this is not the time." "You weren't invited." "I know," I replied, lifting the leather satchel at my side. "But I brought something you'll all want to see." I moved past them into the grand dining room, where guests perched around the table, laden with roast goose-glazed ham and silver bowls of cranberries. I set the satchel on the polished wood and drew out a thick binder. "Since you've spent so many years calling me a disgrace, I thought it was time to show everyone what disgrace really looks like." My father lunged forward, his hand slamming the table, but I opened the binder before him, spreading out documents with ruthless precision. The first section bore his name: tax records, bank transfers, Cayman accounts. Richard Lawson, the decorated veteran, the honorable businessman, I announced, my voice ringing over the sudden silence. Stealing from the country he claimed to serve, falsifying taxes, hiding money offshore. Patriotism or profiteering? Gasps rose around the room. A neighbor leaned forward, squinting at the numbers. My father's face flushed crimson, his hand trembling as he tried to sweep the papers aside. Lies, he roared. But I placed another document atop the pile, a signed statement from one of Maya's sources, complete with photographs of him slipping into a hotel to meet a shady accountant. The murmurs deepened into outrage. I turned to Ethan next. His smirk faltered as I laid out the email chain, enlarged copies of bribe payments, photographs of him sliding behind the wheel of a Porsche not registered in his name. Ethan Lawson, the shining lawyer, the pride of this family. Selling verdicts for vacations, trading justice for cash. "How many clients paid for your loyalty?" Ethan stammered. This is taken out of context, but the room erupted with voices. Former clients among the guests exchanging furious looks. One man slammed his fist against the chair. "I trusted you with my case." My sister tried to laugh, her voice shrill. "Rachel, this charade," I cut her off, flinging glossy photographs onto the table. Victoria caught them in her manicured hands, her smile draining. Images of her strolling from boutiques, designer bags bulging, time-stamped with dates of her charity fundraisers. "Victoria Lawson, the philanthropist," I said, coldly. "Stealing from orphans to buy Prada. Every gala, every speech, every crocodile tear lined your pockets." Gasps turned into shouts. A woman from the charity board rose to her feet, fury blazing. "You've ruined us, Victoria. The donors will pull everything." My sister's face contorted, her mask cracking. "You set me up," she shrieked. "You always hated me." I stepped closer, my gaze unwavering. "I didn't have to set you up. You destroyed yourself." The room pulsed with chaos, voices overlapping, reputations crumbling before my eyes. My mother tried to regain control, clapping her hands weakly. "Enough! This is not the place!" But I silenced her with a glance. For years, she had gaslit me, told me I exaggerated, that my father's hand was discipline, that my siblings' cruelty was just teasing. Tonight, she would not erase me. "You all sat by and let him call me trash. Let him humiliate my child. Let him strike me down with words and fists. You told me to be silent. But silence ends tonight." My father staggered to his feet, rage boiling. "You dare come into my house and— This is not your house." I snapped, my voice cutting through his thunder. "This house is built on lies and laundered money, and it will crumble with you. I've already filed with the IRS, the Bar Association, the Attorney General. They will come for you. But I wanted everyone here to know first, because you taught me that humiliation is most effective in public." He froze, the fire in his eyes, faltering, his authority unraveling as whispers turned into condemnation. Guests rose, some storming out, others confronting my siblings, accusations flying. The chandelier above seemed to tremble with the weight of it. For the first time in my life, I watched Richard Lawson speechless. His empire of fear cracked his control, slipping through his fists like sand. I gathered the binder, sliding it back into my satchel, and turned toward the door. My voice carried one last time. "You called me the family disgrace. Tonight the truth is clear. The disgrace was never me." With that, I walked into the snowy night, leaving their world in ruins behind me. The fallout began faster than even I expected. Within days, the phone calls started. First from neighbors, their voices tinged with disbelief, and schadenfreude, eager to tell me that Richard Lawson's name was splashed across the local paper. The headline screamed of tax fraud, offshore accounts, and federal investigation. The decorated veteran turned businessman had become a symbol of hypocrisy, his photograph beneath bold letters that read, "From honor to deceit." Soon after, the IRS froze his accounts. Creditors descended, and the mortgage company, long appeased with manipulated payments, demanded back dues. The house that had been the stage for so many humiliations now stood under the shadow of foreclosure. Ethan's world unraveled next. The State Bar Association opened a formal inquiry, suspending his license pending investigation. His clients fled, horrified to learn that their trust had been sold to the highest bidder. Former colleagues whispered, then shouted that they had suspected all along. His phone calls to me were desperate, voice cracking with panic. "Rachel, you can't let them do this. You have to tell them I cut him off coldly." "Tell them what?" "That the disgraceful sister framed you." "No, Ethan, I didn't create those bank transfers. You did. Actions have consequences." He cursed his fury, a pale imitation of our father's, but behind it I heard the tremor of a man watching his empire collapse. Victoria fared no better. Donors abandoned her charity in droves, the board dissolved, and lawsuits piled at her doorstep. Former friends who had sipped champagne at her galas turned their backs, whispering about stolen funds and betrayal. Her once flawless social media accounts filled with venomous comments, her carefully curated image crumbling. One evening, she called her voice brittle. "Do you realize what you've done to my children? Their school won't have them back. Their friends' parents won't allow play dates. You've destroyed their lives." My grip tightened on the phone. "I protected my child when you all tried to destroy her. Maybe now you'll understand what cruelty costs." She sobbed, then screamed, then hung up. My mother, Evelyn, was the only one who remained silent, but Maya's reports told me enough. She had been seen leaving the bank with stacks of paperwork, her face drawn, her shoulders slumped. Without Richard's hidden wealth, she was forced to sell jewelry, even her beloved country club membership revoked. Still, she never called. She had chosen her loyalty long ago, and now she reaped its harvest. And Richard, my father, could not hide forever. Federal agents arrived within weeks, seizing files, computers, even medals displayed in the study as evidence. He was escorted from the very front door he had once commanded me to leave cameras flashing as neighbors whispered behind gloved hands. For the first time, the great Richard Lawson looked small, his fury impotent against the machinery of justice. At night, as I tucked Lily into bed in our new apartment, she sometimes asked, "Are we going back to Grandpa's house?" I would stroke her hair and whisper, "No, love. That house is gone now." She would nod, accepting, and drift into sleep, her breath steady. The truth was that the house still stood, but the family who had ruled it like tyrants had been hollowed out by their own sins. Watching their downfall did not bring me the simple satisfaction I imagined. There were moments when guilt clawed at me, whispers that I had gone too far. But then I remembered Lily's tears at that table, the sting of my father's words, the slap hovering in the air, and I knew this was not vengeance. It was justice. I poured energy into securing our life. Opening an account for Lily's education, investing in my foundation to help other women break free from cycles of abuse and gaslighting. Reporters began to call me, sensing there was more to the story, but I declined interviews. This was not about fame. It was about freedom. Yet freedom came at a cost. One evening, as snow drifted softly outside, I answered the phone to hear my father's voice from the detention center. Gone was the thunder, gone the authority. His tone was ragged, stripped bare. "Rachel," he rasped, "I need you. They're saying I could go to prison for years. You have to help me." I closed my eyes, memories colliding his booming orders, the sting of his hand, the word disgrace hurled like a curse. "You always said I was nothing," I replied quietly. "Now you know what nothing feels like." He tried again, softer this time. "Please, for your mother's sake, for the family." I cut the line. The consequences were his to bear. For once, the chains that had bound me to their cruelty lay broken, and I would not forge them anew. In the weeks that followed, the silence in my life was deafening, but it was a healing silence, not the suffocating one I had endured in that house for years. For the first time, no voice barked orders at me, no sneer cut into my confidence. No gaslighting twisted my memory into doubt. Instead, mornings began with Lily's laughter spilling through our new home, her crayons scattered across the kitchen table, her drawings taped proudly to the fridge. She thrived like a flower finally given sunlight. Her nightmares of Thanksgiving slowly faded, replaced by dreams of beaches and birthday parties, the innocence she had nearly lost reclaiming its place in her heart. I poured myself into building the foundation I had long dreamed of. We named it New Dawn, dedicated to single mothers breaking free from toxic families and cycles of abuse. With Daniel's legal guidance and Maya's investigative instincts, we structured it carefully: scholarships for education, grants for housing, legal aid for those fighting custody battles. Each success story I witnessed became a mirror of my own journey. Women clutching their children's hands as they signed new leases. Mothers walking out of courtrooms with their heads high, families starting fresh without chains of manipulation. Slowly, a network grew, a chosen family forged from resilience. And still, the echoes of my blood family lingered. The news reported regularly on their downfall. Richard Lawson indicted on charges of fraud and tax evasion. Ethan disbarred his once pristine career, now a cautionary tale. Victoria sued by donors, her reputation shredded beyond repair. Evelyn photographed leaving the courthouse, her face pale, her pearls gone. Each headline should have brought triumph, but what I felt was not glee, it was release. Their power over me had dissolved, replaced by something steadier than revenge: freedom. One snowy evening, Daniel joined Lily and me for dinner. We ate spaghetti while Lily chattered about her school art project. After she went to bed, Daniel leaned across the table. "You did it, Rachel. You didn't just bring them down. You built something stronger out of the wreckage." His words sank deep. For years, I had sought my father's approval, my mother's affection, my siblings' respect. But sitting there, I realized I no longer needed any of it. What I needed was already here: my daughter's joy, my own dignity, and the community I was creating. At Christmas, instead of walking into a house of judgment, Lily and I hosted friends from the foundation. We decorated cookies, sang carols, exchanged gifts, chosen with care rather than obligation. When Lily unwrapped a set of watercolors, her smile stretched wide. "Mommy, it feels like we have a real family now," she whispered. I hugged her, my throat tight. "That's because we do." Months passed and spring bloomed. Lily's artwork was displayed at a community gallery, her confidence shining. I stood beside her, tears in my eyes, as strangers admired her painting of a girl standing tall in a storm, her arms raised against the wind. The symbolism was not lost on me. Later, as we walked home beneath budding trees, Lily asked softly, "Do you think Grandpa will ever say sorry?" I paused, the weight of years pressing against me, then answered honestly, "Maybe, but we don't need his sorry to be whole. We already are." That night, I sat on the porch watching the stars prick the sky. For the first time in my life, I felt not like a disgrace, but like a survivor, a protector, a woman who had faced the storm and built something beautiful from its wreckage. The Lawsons had called me the family disgrace, but in truth, their disgrace had been exposed. My legacy would be different: a daughter who knew her worth and a foundation that gave others the courage to reclaim theirs. Summer arrived warm and golden, the kind of season that once meant forced garden parties at my parents' estate, but now meant afternoons on the porch, with Lily's laughter drifting on the breeze. The scandals had quieted into court dates and legal filings, the Lawsons reduced to cautionary tales whispered in the same social circles that once worshipped them. And me, I had never been stronger. The foundation flourished, mothers arriving each week with stories of survival, each one carrying shadows of their own. Richard, their own Evelyn, their own perfect siblings who cut them down. Together, we built a chorus that replaced shame with solidarity. Lily thrived at school, her drawings growing more intricate, her friendships blooming. Her teacher once pulled me aside, saying, "Your daughter is resilient in a way I rarely see." I smiled, knowing that resilience was forged in storms she should never have had to endure, but proud that she now lived in sunlight. On the 4th of July, we joined our neighbors on the hill overlooking the city fireworks, bursting overhead in red and gold. Lily leaned against me, her eyes wide, and whispered, "It feels like we're free." I kissed her hair, tears stinging my eyes. "We are baby. We finally are." Months later, I received a letter in the mail, the handwriting unmistakable. My father's. The words were short-clipped but different than the thunder of his past. "Rachel, I do not expect forgiveness. I only hope that someday when the noise is gone, you will remember I loved you in my way. I am sorry for what I did to you and Lily. I sat with the letter for a long time. Once I would have grasped it like water in the desert, desperate for validation. Now I placed it gently in a drawer. An apology was not a bridge, not absolution. But it was a crack in the armor of a man who once called me trash. Whether genuine or not, it no longer defined me. What defined me was the life I had built beyond his shadow. That November, 1 year after the night of the blizzard, Lily and I hosted Thanksgiving in our home. Friends gathered around a long wooden table, dishes passed with laughter, every face glowing in candlelight. Before we ate, Lily tugged my sleeve. "Mommy, can we say what we're thankful for?" She stood small but steady and said, "I'm thankful for my mom because she never let anyone tell us we weren't good enough." The room grew quiet, then erupted in applause, and my chest swelled with a pride no humiliation could ever steal. Later that night, after Lily had gone to bed, I stood at the window watching snow begin to fall soft and silent. My reflection looked back at me not as the disgraced daughter, but as a woman who had survived abuse, outwitted corruption, and created a legacy of truth. And to those listening now, maybe you've been told you are the failure, the embarrassment, the disgrace. Maybe your own family has tried to shrink you into silence. Hear me when I say, their words do not define you. You are not their shame. You are your own strength. The night my father cast me into the snow, he thought he was destroying me. Instead, he freed me to become everything he feared, independent, defiant, unbroken. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself and for the ones who depend on you is to walk away from those who refuse to see your worth, even if they share your blood. Real family is not obligation, not appearances, not chains of control. Real family is love, respect, and freedom to be exactly who you are. That is the legacy I choose for Lily, and the legacy you can choose for yourself.